Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Missing Wolves post-game live stream podcast thing. I'm your host, Andrew Dukowitz, and today I'm joined by the one, the only Ryen Eichten from Canis Hoopus in It's Mark Cuban's Fault episode. That's what I learned today. It's all Mark Cuban's fault. But Ryan, first, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
No complaints. Wolves win a game in clutch time. I guess first we'll just kind of get into it. I mean, what were your key takeaways from this win over the Celtics?
Yeah, so I think back to some of the locker room comments they made back in Oklahoma City, which, hey, we had media out in Oklahoma City on Wednesday.
We did.
How fun is that? Crazy. And I think both Ant and Shannon said something like, there are no moral victories. Like you're trying to win the games. And I think that's the correct stance to have. And so I'm going to carry that over to a game like tonight and be like, you won the game. We'll talk about some of the frustrating aspects of the game. Certainly that 12-0 run down the stretch of the fourth quarter was all too reminiscent of what they've been doing. But ultimately I thought, especially in the second half, which also has kind of been a little bit of a theme here, second half defensively, I thought they played pretty well. They were able to slow down Jaylen Brown, which they weren't doing at all in the first half. And they avoided the 4-game losing streak, that's the biggest thing they needed to do.
Yeah, avoided the 4-game losing streak. I think, we talked to Mike in the locker room after the game and asked him of just like, was it just a relief that 3-pointer went in and kind of something went right? And everyone in the locker room kind of confirmed that, like, just having gotten over the hump and not something horribly wrong happening really meant a lot to these guys, which, again, I kind of agree with you. Like, there's not moral victories. Oklahoma City was fun, but a loss is a loss. And this game, a win is a win. I mean, and it happens to be their first win over a 500 team. And I thought Boston certainly looked like they were a competitive team for most of this game, which let's first just talk about the elephant in the room. I mean, Jaylen Brown was just going off at will in the first half. What did you see from them out of the second half to kind of slow him down? I guess slow him down in quotation marks, because he's still at, I think, 17 in the second half, but he didn't finish with 50.
Yeah, to figure out what they did differently, I feel like I would have to go back and really watch it again. That's kind of something that on a second watch is easier to see. I mean, I guess some of it was probably just him missing shots that he made in the first half, obviously. I think they just did a better job of playing their correct defensive principles. I don't think a lot of times it didn't feel like they had the right guy on them in the first half. They weren't matching up correctly. Really, the entire first half defensively, I don't think they executed very well. Obviously, just the raw point totals, like they gave up 70 in the first half, and only 40 something in the second half. Like that's obviously just stands out easily there. Something that they did better. But I think just looking at this Boston roster, and it was something that I felt like in the preseason that obviously their team is significantly different than it was a season ago. It started with Tatum getting hurt in the playoffs, and then it continued with them trying to get under the luxury tax aprons with trading Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and Al Horford left in free agency. And so they haven't gone in the full tank just because they haven't gotten like as injured as like say Indiana has gotten, bad luck wise. But they play the same way. They play the same way they have the past couple of years when they won the championship, when they were probably the best team in the East the year before losing in the playoffs. They play that same way, and so that is what's going to get them wins and keep them in games. But ultimately, when they run up against teams like the Wolves, they're just going to be at a talent deficit, and I think that's what the Wolves were able to do, especially on the defensive end. Just make anyone else beat you. Obviously, like Derek White and Peyton Pritchard are very good players. Pritchard, especially on the offensive end. But just like, it's like at a certain point, anyone else. And it probably was Boston's playing defensively against Ant too, although there's not much you can do when that guy drops the ball and just kind of throws it up and hits the dagger on you.
Yeah, I mean, talked to Ant after the game, and what I noticed is Ant and Jaden went from switching off of Brown pretty much every chance they got, where then you have Dante or Nas or Rudy trying to do something. And then the second half, it seemed like Ant and Jaden were just stuck to him. They were fighting through screens. They were trying to just make things difficult. And Ant kind of said, he had 40. They had to do something wrong, or they had to do something different to stop him. And I mean, it worked. Jalen shoots 6 of 14 in the second half. He goes 11 for 18 in the first half. Some of that is just, variance, but also trying to get the ball out of his hands. And I mean, that was probably the most shocking part of this iteration of the Celtics, is just they don't have a lot of other pieces. Like if Sam Hauser is shooting 12 times, you're fine. If Pritchard's shooting 15, I think most teams take that. So it worked. I mean, the other thing I'll say is, like, Jalen was probably the only guy I'd say that was like locked in from the tip of just being kind of sensational, but then he ends up fouling out. And we'll talk a little bit about just like the clutch time offense just seems better with Mike Conley on the floor. I don't know if it came across on the TV, but it just, people didn't look panicked. And the only thing that was different is Mike was out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see, when did Mike officially check in? I mean, Mike was on the floor for of that 12-0 run late in the game. Mike was on the floor for 10 of those points. So at least defensively, obviously that's going to be the difference there. And I think Mike's obviously a good player to have. I think mostly just like bringing the ball up the floor for 90% of the game. Ant can do that. Julius can do that. But late in the game, we saw it in Oklahoma City. I thought one of the turning points of that game late was they pressured the ball, and the TV broadcast missed it, which I'll go on a quick tangent here. 3 times tonight, the TV broadcast was cutting away to something, and they just didn't quite see what was happening. So it's another frustration, but
that's annoying.
Yeah, it's kind of been an all season thing. And I know people have talked about it before, but I lost my train of thought. Shoot. But late in the game against Oklahoma City, they forced the ball out of Ant's hands and into Dante's hands. He turns it over, and Oklahoma City goes up 2, and they never end up giving the lead back. So I think avoiding that kind of stuff, and Dante did have a turnover late during that brief 12-0 run. Having Mike on the floor for that, because I don't think they need him to run offense late, because the game ceiling bucket, the 3 you talked about, was an Ant Julius pick and roll where Julius like slips out, because Rudy's been really good in the short roll. Not really, has been solid in the short roll all year when they've tried to find him. But if you can get Julius in that spot, I mean, I always talk about the Warriors built a dynasty on Draymond coming out of the short roll off of Curry pick and rolls. If you can get Julius in that spot, you're going to see what that possession was late. Found Mike in the corner and he hits it. So you don't necessarily need Mike to run the offense in the half court setting, but if you can get the ball across half court, get it to Ant there, then you can run an action from there. And just, I mean, we always talk about it, like just the adult in the room kind of factor of it. I think is always good to have Mike on the court.
Yeah, I mean, Ant, to your point, like that is exactly what Ant said after the game, which for people listening to this audio, Ryen was not at the game tonight. He was coming back into town, and there's a blizzard in Minnesota, which is just perfect for the weekend after Thanksgiving. But, Ant, after the game, we asked him of like, what do you think of Mike's shot or playing in clutch time? And Ant said that he was like, I don't like bringing up the ball in the fourth quarter because I have 10 eyes on me the entire game. And if I can get a little bit of a break and somebody else can bring it up, like that's super helpful. And I think what we've seen through this like no point guard experiment, which Finch is now openly calling Ant the point guard. So I guess that's their answer, but Dante just can't do that consistently. Like he gets overpowered by bigger defenders. He's had these moments where he coughs the ball up. Julius, I think, struggles at times to bring the ball up, and I just don't really trust Jaden to do that at this point. So if there isn't a Mike on the floor, it just falls on Ants, and that's more pressure on him, which if Mike can just get that little tiny bit of pressure off of Ant, I think it does make a world of difference. And then he is a capable 3-point shooter. Like if Mike's in the corner, I think most people are going to feel pretty confident that it's going in. I just thought it was an interesting wrinkle. Like I obviously if Jaden's not fouling out, he's probably playing to close the game. But, seeing just the difference in like vibes, just having Mike out there was interesting, is what I'd say.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear. Like you said, I wasn't able to attend the game and be in the locker room, but it's interesting to hear that Ant specifically says late in the games he doesn't necessarily want to take the ball up the floor. I'm sure it's different at different points in the game where where they're not picking you up full court or whatever. Yeah, it's just something that they need to. It's clear that they needed to change something late, and even still changing stuff, they still had a a brutal stretch, which it's so annoying that it feels inevitable, these stretches. But on the flip side, like I kind of brought up earlier, they come back from it. Where in the past couple games, it's not that like that the Phoenix loss in and of itself is bad. The Sacramento loss in and of itself is bad, and certainly losing OKC is no big flaw in your team necessarily. But it's like how they responded to the adversity, which it felt like that, especially that Phoenix game was the first time they really got hit in the mouth really all year. And they just melted down. And I felt like in the Sacramento game, that's a good example. I didn't feel like the 10-0 run in the Sacramento game was anything. I mean, it was bad, but like, I just thought like Sacramento made plays. If that 10-0 run could have happened earlier in the game and you wouldn't have noticed it, like blah, blah, blah. But like what they did subsequently giving up the lead that night was just like they melted down. And tonight, again, they give up a 10-0 lead. I thought a lot of it they gave up a couple of offensive rebounds, turnovers, didn't get good shots. But like once it happened, it wasn't like a meltdown from that point forward. It was, okay, let's get a good shot. And they got a great shot. They, like I already dissected the play, but they got the Mike wide open corner three, which late in games, it's pretty much as good as you're going to want to get.
And that's what's like kind of frustrating with how this team is constructed right now, which like we don't need to get into trade talks 12 minutes into a post-game show, but like it is like it's not lost on me that like that play came out of a essentially like a dead ball where they could like call a play and theoretically rehearse it and get a look like that. For me, it's like, how do you take that instance and pull it into like a live ball situation where you're just bringing the ball up the court? Like, how do you get that structure to stick? Because I mean, if you're asking me, like the biggest kind of vulnerabilities I saw in those games, the last three games, were just the late game offense is just all ISO ball. I mean, it really doesn't seem like there's much of a plan other than your term, my term, which tonight showed that they can have a plan. It's just, how do you get that plan to stick without having to call a timeout and tell everyone what they're doing, right?
Yeah, and it's especially early in the year, ISO ball has been like an effective action for them, especially with Julius on the ball. Like he's been great in that area, but when the game gets down to the last minutes, it's like it can't be the only thing you're relying on, especially if the other team has their best defensive lineup out there and there's not like a mismatch you can hunt. And I'll have to go back and watch like all the Julius Ant pick and rolls like from earlier in the season or even last year. But I really think could be a nice action that they can run. Especially they did sub out Rudy with 2:41 left and ran the rest of the game. I think, and they subbed him back in defense later. But like they decided to go down the stretch without Rudy, and especially if that's going to be the look, then an Ant Julius pick and roll is going to be really tough to stop because you're going to be able to play 5 out. Nas will be on the floor. Some combination of Dante and Mike and Jaden will also be out there. That should just be a profitable offensive set. Even tonight when the offense is kind of spiraling late, they're able to generate a good shot. And it's not that one action solves all their late game issues, but it is like hopefully it's like some sort of light bulb moment of like, that's an action we can run specifically. So, because if they're just going to keep bringing 2 to the ball, you talk about trade season and maybe that's like an area where they can fix, against teams that just take the ball of Ant's hands, another like an attacking guard or whatever. But if they can make Julius that person where he's like, I mean, you can go watch the playback. The defense had no choice. It was either stop Julius running down the lane or leave Mike wide open in the corner, which I guess in that, especially the tie game, you hope someone misses a wide open shot.
Yeah. I mean, it is, it's one of those things where I feel like Ant's entire career, we've been almost like pigeonholing these different like scenarios in where it's like, oh, maybe like Ant and Cat can be like their own 2-man game, and then D'Lo and Rudy Gobert can be their own 2-man games, and like Ant and Cat theoretically can work off each other like this way, and then it just never kind of happens. And I feel like with Julius so far, it's been similar to that, but like then you see these flashes where it's like, oh, if they just actually run like a pick and roll action and Julius rolls hard, the help is going to have to come. And then it just is this like light bulb that goes off. But then this team seems to almost like lock that light bulb back in a closet and forget about it until the next time we see this glimpse of it. And it's just interesting. There's such a weird team that it's interesting that, like, if they do this against Phoenix, maybe they end up winning that Phoenix game. I'm going to throw us over to a quick break here, but first, Godfrey says Dante must have bet the Celtics to cover, and Dante's foul on that 3-point shot with 30 seconds left was insane. I don't think Dante is involved in that gambling thing, but
the Hauser 3 at the end covered the spread. I didn't realize that the Celtics covered on that meaningless last shot. That's funny.
I'm going to throw us over to a quick ad read, though. When we come back, I do want to talk about Ant's free throw shooting, because he said something in the locker room that I hadn't thought about at all, but it's pretty interesting.
Well, hello. Thank you, Livestream Andrew. This is Ad Read Andrew. And today we have Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, the presenting sponsor for the Missing Links podcast. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling strives to inspire people to follow their ideas, working with respect and understanding to create a quality, tailored result. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, located in Blaine and serving in the North Metro area, is here to help you with your building and remodeling needs. I can say personally, thanks to Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, I have a beautiful deck in my backyard, and countless projects that I started, they finished. Get started on your new deck or remodel today by calling Isaac at 763-710-5686. And we're back with another ad read, this time for Pence Homes, the presenting sponsor of Hitting the Hardwood Network. From the best tools and technology to transparency throughout the entire process, Nate Pence and the Pence Homes team is the top choice for buyers, sellers, and is proud to support you and your home ownership goals. Get started today by calling 612-308-1122 or by emailing info@pencehomes.com.
All right. So Ant, after the game, Chris Hine from the Star Tribune, who was in OKC. Also, everyone go email the Star Tribune to send Chris Hine on road trips, because we need that guy out there. Anyways, back on track. He asked Ant about getting rid of his step after free throws, which I'm going to be honest, like, I've never really paid attention to it too much until one Mark Cuban brought it up on a podcast over the summer that, like, people have violations all the time, and essentially said, Ant, for example, steps over the line on all of his free throws. And Ant says because of that podcast, the officials and other people around the league reached out to him and told him he had to change his free throw form. So he's like on the fly trying to change his free throw form this year. He didn't blame his recent like free throw struggles on it. That's not really Ant's style, but like it did get me thinking, like, maybe that is just as simple and black and white as it can be. Like, that might be why Ant's just struggling shooting free throws. It sucks to change your form midway through your career.
Yeah, that makes sense. I, like, you hadn't really noticed that something was different with his routine, but I also kind of feel like, why are podcasts changing the way officials deal with the game? If they felt like the free throw issues were an issue, then they should have brought it up themselves. Why is even a part owner of a team, why, like, that'd be my thing, is like, so if we grow this thing big enough, can we get real changes that affect our team positively. Like
I will certainly be bringing up Rudy getting hit in the face 37 times a game and how that should be an offensive foul every time, but continue, keep cooking, because I agree with you.
Yeah, so if I just complain about the nonsensical pool report that came out of the Oklahoma City game, like do I get rules changed? Like just call the game how you think it's going to be. Like can I complain about the Nafisa Collier injury from the playoffs last year and how I thought their tweet was dumb? Like just like officiate the game how you want to. Oh, here's another one. You never call flops. You have a flopping rule. Call it. Like I don't know, that'd be my bigger takeaway, but maybe the actual game breakdown is better analysis of that's why he's struggling in free throw. I would always just like as a kind of as a stat person, I would probably lean more towards we're grasping at small samples. Like you can probably find whatever his recent free throw shooting form is, you can probably find half a dozen times in his career where he's had a similar stretch.
I mean, that is like he just said that, and I just it kind of like hit me of like, oh yeah, that, you know, is he going to shoot 4% less this season because he's trying to figure out his base on free throws? Like,
yeah, maybe.
Like he could be, and if that's the case, then it's like, to your point, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly where my head goes, is like, why does Mark Cuban have the power to dictate how Anthony Edwards gets officiated on free throws? Like, why can't we use that power for good, like the Isaiah Hartenstein phantom smack to the face, or litany of other weird rules and things that are going on in the NBA? But like, I'm actually kind of subscribed to that idea that like maybe that is just as simple as it is. Like Ant got told he needs to change his free throw over the off season, and he's still figuring it out. That is hard. I mean, we're looking at, you know, we're looking at Rob Dillingham do that right now with his jump shot. Jaden has talked about like having to change like his release point on his shot and how that's messed with him in the past. Like, it is really hard to just change a shot midway through your career.
Yeah, very true. And it's not to say that like your idea is worthless. It's probably right. I just more want to complain. How about that?
Complaining is good too.
Although I will say just about officials, I feel like I personally have a much more relaxed feeling about the refs since the Cat trade. Like a lot of my NBA officiating frustration was just how Cat was officiated, and now that he's not, that part of the Cat's game is not our problem. It's much easier to just so much of how they officiated Cat when he was in Minnesota was always will and always did bug me.
I will say there are things every game that Julius does. Like he'll have little push-offs with like his shoulder digging in and then falling back, or he'll have little moments where he's like wrapping his elbow around somebody, and I get like PTSD of Cat getting called for that and then like bumpily walking around the court like with his what is going on. And it is kind of ridiculous how two players can do the exact same thing and one will get called just off of reputation, one won't. I think Jaden, he fouls out tonight, and there was a couple fouls on him. One on Brown where it was just like Brown initiated all the contact, and like Jaden, it's just what are you supposed to do? And because Jaden's kind of known for being a handsy player, they call it. It is, I'll say, like, officiating is an imperfect science, and the NBA officiating is light years ahead of the WNBA officiating.
Oh,
I can assure everyone listening that the NBA officials know all of the rules, which is, you know, a drastic difference. But it is still like, you know, that was a conversation in the locker room after the game of just, you know, Mike was talking about it of just, in past years, the Wolves had this reputation of being like a gritty, hard to play against teams. And this year, because they're more spread it out, pace, run, it just has, you know, they're getting called on some of these ticky-tack things that when they were a gritty team, they weren't getting called on. So it's kind of this adjustment to learn how to be officiated again, which Again, I think some of this stuff, we're looking at a team 3 games over 500, where last year they were a game below, and Rudy and Julius, we were wondering if they were going to fight in the locker room. Like, it's all with perspective, but it is interesting that, officiating is coming up in the locker room, at least.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things I feel like where it's for stretches of games, it's not even to bash on the officials. Like, you just feel like you're not getting the calls, whether that's because of whatever. Like, there's just gonna be stretches of when you get those calls, when you don't, whether you just the minutia of getting contact. There was a call, Ant didn't get the call, and then he drew the technical because he wouldn't pick up the ball from the official afterward. The replay, they showed it on TV. I think Rudy fouls him. I'm not kidding.
He gets fouled by Rudy on the right side, and he gets fouled like on his gather. And it's like, why does Rudy have his hand in there?
I kind of think the contact that he gets most on that play that causes him to lose the ball is Rudy hits him on the arm. Yeah.
It is. Which then I wonder, like, is Rudy just like, hey man, my bad. Like, I swatted your arm.
I guess. And it's like, there was a stretch last season where he was doing that rip through move on the way to the rim. He was getting hit in the arm like every single time and they wouldn't call it. That goes back. Like, there's just stretches of seasons where you're going to get weird calls, not even to blame the officials. And it's like the cliche, it's a cliche, but it's true. It's like, how do you then deal with it? You can complain, you can draw a tech. I don't much care unless you're going to get suspended like Ant was last year. But it's like, how do you then deal with it? How do you let it screw you up? Which I felt like in the West Finals, they did a little bit too much of that, where they let the officiating get too much into their heads. And like, again, right or wrong, obviously we can, if we want to go relitigate the officiating in the West Finals, but like, I thought they let it get them out of their games, especially the road games out there in Oklahoma City. I think they clearly were frustrated with the calls tonight, but I don't feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it took them out of their game as much as it has in the past.
No, I would agree with that. Cole just mentions he gets fouled by 3 players, including Rudy. There
you go.
You're probably right there. He gets hit on the gather, hit on his way up, and then Rudy comes off the top rope with like a chop down on his arm. It's just such an, like, I know like Kyle Teige and Dane Moore have like a t-shirt that was on sale years ago of just weirdest team ever. Like, it just continues to be the case. Like, there's just something in the water or something that, like, this is just a weird team. Like, some nights officiating drives them absolutely nuts and they get in their own head and they can throw a game. Other nights it doesn't bother them at all and it's all vibes, and Ant is like doing finger guns at people in the front row and like everybody's having a good, there's not really any rhyme or reason for it. Even like the first half of tonight's game, like, it's the same players, like, it's the same plays. I don't think they changed anything like drastically from one half to the other. It's just the second half they decide to just do everything better, and then like the Boston doesn't have the talent to kind of keep up with them, which I think for a lot of fans and even us covering the team, like, I'll be honest, it's frustrating to cover this team sometimes where it's just like, what happens? But I think for fans especially, like, that's why there's so much frustration around Finch. That's why there's so much frustration around like a trade needing to happen, is because there really isn't there isn't a rhyme or reason for why this team can be flat one quarter and on fire the next, why some games they start slow, other games they start white hot, why some clutch times they look awesome like tonight, other clutch times they're vomiting all over themselves. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever gotten one, but like, no one ever really gives us an answer of why that is.
You try to get, because no one, I'm in like on the record, no one's ever going to come out and be like, yeah, it's because of this, that, or the other. We're just dumb. No, but I think you try to get like, not even off the record, but just like you're on the team, you're in the locker room, you try to get like little snippets. In the past, it was like they're young, and maybe that's still a lot of the core pieces are still young. But like, it's you're aging out of that pretty quick. I do think like just in this game, the defense just wasn't good enough in the first half. Like, it was poor. They gave up, I think I counted 36 points in the paint. That's more than the Wolves scored the entire game. Or let me double check that number. I think it's 30.
Were at one point 10 for 12 in the restricted area. Like,
yeah,
just
so that's
will.
a good. I think the number I counted out was 32 points in the paint for Boston in the first half, and then they have down 34 for the Wolves in the entire game. So the defense just wasn't good enough. I thought Rudy was a little weirdly passive, which kind of goes back to your like weirdly frustrating stuff. That's just kind of what Rudy does. Sometimes he has, but then second half, I thought he was more than solid, especially offensively for him. Yeah, I don't know. It's incredibly frustrating. Sometimes it's incredibly predictable. I was not surprised in the slightest that they were tied going down the stretch of the game with Oklahoma City on Wednesday. That was not as surprising.
That just seems like a Wolves thing to do.
I think like most people outside looking in, two brutal losses heading into the team that's 18-1. Good luck with that. I mean, obviously they still lost, but it's like, yeah, they'll be tied. Maybe they did blow it. But it's just like, it wasn't surprising that they kept in with that team. And it's like, I think that's just my bigger picture thought. I mean, I don't have many regular season worries about this team. I'd still be unbelievably surprised if they weren't in the top 6. Obviously, probably top 4 is probably what you want, but the 4th seed is probably staring at Oklahoma City in the second round, whatever. They just kind of need to get out of their own way. They have enough talent. They have as much talent. Maybe Oklahoma City ends up being an impenetrable force. Maybe Denver and Houston fall closer to that category than the Wolves category. I don't know. But this team is, other than Oklahoma City, I think has the talent and potential to be as good as any other team in the West, and obviously the East too. Just they got to put it together, and they have. I would say for most of the minutes of the season, they have put it together. And other than like a couple fourth quarters against Denver, and obviously the down the stretches of the games we've been harping on, they haven't. But it's like it's there. I'm very hesitant to talk trades, especially before the deadline. I'm already tired of the fire Finch stuff. Just be one, I just don't think it'd be a smart move. 2, it's just I'm a Twins fan, right? And I'll complain about the payroll as much as I want, but I'm not going to argue that they should be the Yankees, because that's not in the realm of like logic or reason or reality. You can want a new coach for the Wolves. I'll disagree with you, but like that's your prerogative. The Wolves are not letting go of Finch before the end of the season. They're just not going to do that. Like, I don't know how to, I'm not reporting anything, but like, unless things drastically change, which again, I don't think will happen. Like, they're not going to let go of Finch. So you can either scream about it until you're blue in the face, or we can like have a discussion about things that are like actually going to happen.
Yeah, I will second that. I will also say that's the Twitter fight I've gotten in this week the most. Is I put out a tweet saying that Mike Conley is an untouchable. They're not trading Mike. Like, if they end up trading Mike, I will eat crow. I will apologize to everybody who wants one personally, but like, they're not firing Finch. They're not trading Mike. Like, there's just certain things that like they're just not going to do. Like, and you know, if they fire him this offseason and bring in Michael Malone, I don't know what changes. Like, Malone will yell at his players publicly more, but like, I don't think that just is all of a sudden going to get them to show up consistently, I guess. What I will say though is, you know, this team, I do agree with you of when the postseason comes, they just have that like it factor. Like, whether it's Ant and Jaden who can go up a level, whether it's Julius, who last season, you know, turned into like a diet LeBron and was running everything. Rudy, even when he struggles in the postseason, is like fine for the most part. Like, they're going to be here when it matters. It's just how many gastric ulcers are people going to get, and how much hair are we going to lose on the way to that? Couple things I just want to ask you about that came up in the chat here before we get out of here, Ryan. Spencer brings up Rob not getting any minutes in the second half. Any thoughts there? I'll just preface it by saying, like, honestly, the last 3.5 games, like, Rob's been fine. I wouldn't say he's been like a B+ A type player, but like tonight he looked good. The last 3 games and the losses, he looked good. The only real like change I guess I noticed is the start of the fourth quarter they went with Mike and then immediately sub Jalen Clark out for Dante, where normally they put Rob in for 3 or 4 minutes in that time. But yeah, did you have any thoughts on just how Rob's playing and why he didn't get those minutes in the second half?
Yeah, I think I agree with you that Dillingham's been playing better, and it's just there's a game, I think it was the Wizards game, where it was just like he's not like can he even make a shot? Like it was just the shot just looked broken. I since then he's played solid and has made shots, so I'm certainly willing to just kind of toss that game aside and really hopefully kind of similar to Shannon toss the whole first 15 games or so aside for Rob. I think their decision, I don't know if someone asked, I doubt someone asked it to Finch post game, but I would say it just came down to defense, and it's never effort with Rob. But he was just getting cooked. That's the reality. And he's been solid defensively, I think, given what the limitations are. He's especially had a good couple steals and active hands and all that. And even when he was struggling, I think the playmaking's been solid, like making the right pass, making the right move. It's just been like the jump shot hasn't been there, but he had a oh no yes step back in this one. That, I mean, it's good to see that again. The shot decisions haven't been the issue. It's been seeing the ball go in. So I guess seeing the opposite of that, a bad shot go in is good to see. But I just think it came down to defense. Boston was just cooking them in the second half, and that's going to be what it is for Rob this year. I think it's hard to complain. I said previously, I don't necessarily agree with them playing all three of Shannon, Clark, Dillingham, especially if they're only going to get a very small amount of minutes, but maybe I don't mind it if it's like the first half, you play all three of them. And then when you get to second half, you decide which one or which two of the three makes sense for that matchup. And I can see why in that case, they went with Shannon and Clark instead of Dilly.
Spencer agrees with you. He was getting hunted in the first 3 minutes. Professor adds, Dante's plus minus is the best on the team, playing 34 minutes for a reason. He was also 8 assists, hit 4 threes, I think. It was a good Dante game. I think he's also a little underrated as a defender. Dante, his give a bleep factor is way up there, which, isn't always the best thing. When you see him trying to rip a pass and then creates a 5-on-4, and I can't remember if Brown got fouled, but somebody got fouled. But then it's awesome when he's bodying Derek White, and it looks great.
To go back to the Kings and Suns games, that I know I railed about the Fire Finch stuff, but where he clearly made a mistake is I think Clark needs to be in the game down the when you need to stop defensively. I know he's had a couple of poor dumb fouls, but Dante's already gotten hit 2 game winners basically around him. Not to really even bash on Dante, but it's that's the one place where Finch I think takes the most responsibility. Clark's got to be out there. And
to Finch's credit, Britt kind of grilled him on it at practice yesterday, and Finch said as much. He had some really dumb fouls, and we feel like the effort had fallen off a little bit. So maybe it was just as simple as sending a message to Jalen of hey, you can't, when you're a specialized player, you can't have off nights. But you might have lost the game by sending that message, which that isn't ideal either. Sure. I do want to close with Godfrey's question here first, but he first says should have gotten Miles McBride in the Cat trade. Though Miles McBride is so interesting because I think the draft pick that he was picked with was the second rounder that the Wolves sent to Golden State in the Andrew Wiggins trade. So technically he is a Wolves draft pick. So I've always just kind of had an eye on him of hope that guy turns out to be the best player out of all of the tendrils of the Andrew Wiggins Golden State trade, because that would just make my basketball nerd, side explode. Godfrey also mentions, and I will preface this by saying Godfrey's in the chat quite a bit, and I appreciate you, Godfrey, but he is also a Rudy Gobert trade detractor. But, Wolves 2024 take Dilly over Basellas, Zach Edey, Bub Carrington. They could have taken Bobby Clintman or Jamal Sheard, Asia Milson, Jalen Wells. How much of this current roster construction do you feel like is a negative on Tim Conley? Godfrey says, he didn't add the hashtag fire Tim Conley like everyone is doing the hashtag fire Chris Finch. But like, do you feel like this is kind of a problem that Tim Conley has created?
A little bit. I mean, obviously the Rob Dillingham pick has not worked out so far, and it's a real big swing and a miss. I know I see people. The trade machine always frustrates me because I feel like half the trades are illegally. I will say for people making trades, the Wolves do not right now have a first round pick they can trade straight up. They have swaps available to you can't trade the 2028 first round pick. You have to have at least one first round pick you can't have back-to-back drafts without a first round pick. So they can't trade they can on draft night trade like this upcoming draft, they can trade their pick that night, but like pre this deadline, they don't have anything. This offseason will unlock their 2033 pick, I believe. They can then trade it in the offseason. But yeah, I mean, the Dillingham situation is something that the whole organization is going to have to solve. Either get him playing at some point to like the draft slot they drafted him at, or backfill that if it is a mistake. And I'm certainly willing to give the 20-year-old a shot to become what he's supposed to. But yeah, I mean, any GM, you can go down and look at their draft selections and find poor stuff. And maybe if we want to play the game of like Nasri, Jaden, Ant, those are all Gerson Rosas selections. I don't know. I have a hard time really getting on Tim Connolly, especially for what seems to be like, at least right now, a poor draft selection in Rob, when I think every other move, I mean, you can, aside from like marginal two-way contract stuff, has worked out amazingly. The Rudy Gobert trade, which including myself, I think a lot of it was widely panned. I don't know how you couldn't view that as a success. The Cat trade, which was even more head scratching, I think, at least locally from Wolves fans. I don't think that the Cat trade was well received originally. It's hard to view that. I would argue with anyone that I remember emotionally, I did not like it at the time, just like the fan part of me didn't like it. Hard to argue about that trade. Like the big swings they've hit. And like, if we want to go big picture, like they probably do need one more big swing to connect to reach whatever grand goals. And if they don't have like the draft selection they sent out for Rob, that's a tough blow. But other than Sam Presti, I don't think you're going to find a GM that's just like A+ on every single transaction down the board.
Yeah. And Sam Presti's is at this point kind of ludicrous, like how many bites at the apple he gets, and he still is hitting at all of them. But I would agree with you. Like I think we're a long way away from Tim Conley being replaced. Like generally how these things go is, if this year is a disappointment and let's say they get bounced in the first round and they do make a coaching change, like that's still going to be Tim's kind of first coaching hire. And then that guy is probably going to get 3 or 4 years to see what he can do. And then maybe it's a Tim move, which is at that point, like 5 years from now, which, it's tough. The other thing I do give, and Godfrey mentions, Cat trade decision was made sometime. Same time they decided to trade for Rudy. What I would say is like, I think the Rudy trade, they really didn't know that the second apron kind of really punishing structure to the salary cap was going to happen. So when they traded Rudy, I think they were under the impression that they could just re-sign everybody, go super into the luxury tax, and just, replace it with like whoever would leave, you replace them with like a low end draft pick, and you just keep as many star players as you can and try and hit on the low end guys. And then like a year later, this new second apron thing comes in, and like what we're seeing is it's ridiculously hard to navigate that. Like Cleveland went head over heels into the second apron, and they're going to be the first, I think, repeaters because they were in it last year too. So they're going to be the first team that really can't go into the second apron again for 3 or 4 years, which with their team, that's why I'm a big fan of going after Darius Garland at some point, and that might be something that's a possibility because they're in the second apron and they're going to be kind of screwed, which we don't have to get into all of that right now, but it is, I think Tim Conley, as a whole, I agree with you. I don't think you're going to find many people out there that are hitting 100%. And I think he's hit well enough so far, but at the same time, until the Wolves get over that hump, it's hard to grade him for sure.
Yeah. And to your point about the Rudy trade not having the second apron, they didn't know that at the time. Trading for Rob happened before the Cat trade. I think Dan Moore points this out often, is that they made that when they were super up against it with Cat's contract on the book. If the Randall trade comes earlier, do they trade for Dillingham? It's still both are still Tim Connolly's moves. So I think you still got to own that, but it does explain the Dillingham thing. Cause they were in the second apron. They had no chance to add players except for doing what they did. But if they had the Julius Randle trade in hand, things might've been different there too. But I kind of think even if the second apron is a thing, they still trade for Rudy. That'd be my suspicion.
I think, my pushback with the Rudy thing has always been he just instantly reset the culture here and gave them a lot more credibility of this is what professional athletes are supposed to act like and eat and work and all of that stuff. But I do agree with you here, Godfrey, that Rudy's contract, they should have had maybe more of a formulated plan laid out, which maybe, who knows?
I think they did. I think Godfrey kind of pointed this out. They did. They were going to trade Cat. The minute the second apron came out, they knew they were going to trade Cat. And I kind of have this sneaking suspicion as well that when the trade happened, it was all about the money. It was all about the cap. And obviously that's a gigantic force. I kind of feel like Tim Connolly wasn't as sold on all the Cat stuff, just on the court basketball stuff, than whatever ceiling, the best case, Wolves Twitter or whatever had for Cat. I think it was also kind of a bet against Cat in a certain way, just where, what position does Cat play? Is he good? Does his game work offensively as a power forward? We can really get the Cat stuff, but I don't think it was all about the money as well. And I think to Godfrey's point, they did have a plan and they executed it.
I will say that everything they've kind of said, or that I've heard, is that, the Rudy trade happened and then the second apron came and they made this trade. But someday John Krasinski is going to write a book around the same style as the 3-ring circus that came out on the Lakers. And then we'll probably find out of if there was, this bet against Cat, which I'm going to be honest, I don't think there was as much love lost around the Cat thing as maybe everyone in the media kind of portrayed, because
I think they really like him personally, just as a dude. They clearly respected both himself as a person and what he meant to Minnesota and all that stuff. I think and if the price is right, I think they'd bring him back. In the short term, that's not really a possibility, but I think all that is true. But like you said, Cat getting paid $60 million, I think, in a season or two. Yeah, that is, I think, not something that they were sad to part with.
All right, Ryan, I do want to give you the opportunity. Anything you want to plug, anything you have coming out over at Canis? You host a wonderful podcast if you'd like to plug that as well. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll have recaps of tonight's game, tomorrow's game, and I've been trying these newspaper style columns, just kind of big picture takeaways. I did one after the Suns collapse, just kind of they needed their big guy. Ant, Julius, and Finch were the big reasons they lost that game. I kind of dug into they need more from that trio. And then obviously you mentioned my podcast, 2 words, Wolves Pod. Check that out. 2 episodes a week. Only had one for this Thanksgiving week, but yeah, Leo and I do once a week, and then I have a rotating cast of guests, including the Duke on the other side of my screen here, once a month or so. So yeah, check that out. Leo and I will have a pod early this upcoming week.
Well, hey, and if you joined into this late, this will be a podcast that gets released anywhere you find podcasts at The Missing Wolves tomorrow, November 30th at 7 a.m. You can also find us on YouTube, subscribes, all of those things help the algorithm. And we'll be back tomorrow after a Victor Wembanyama less Spurs game. So hopefully there's less weirdness tomorrow. But regardless, we'll be here to talk about it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.